preparedness.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I'm pleased to follow my colleague from King Hans, who I just noticed that we both are wearing pretty much identical ties today. So I'm glad you got my text message this morning. Speaker, I'm quite pleased to speak about this budget and what it means for Canadians, in particular for my constituents here in Ottawa Centre. I think, Speaker, it's really important before we start any conversation about what's contained in this budget is to recognize the fact that we are still living through a global pandemic. We know that life has been quite difficult over the last 2 years as a result of this pandemic. Many citizens, including myself, did not even see such a major change in our lives coming in the form of a public health emergency. The pandemic, Speaker, as it continues to impact our lives, was so dramatic that governments across the world, not just in Canada, but around the globe, had to take immediate action to protect their citizens, from getting infected. In fact, in a more extreme circumstance, dying from this virus that invaded our lives. And for that, governments, including right here in Canada, and provinces and territories within Canada and across the world, took steps to help us be safe by initially shutting down the entire society that we live in. I mean, it was quite unprecedented, and my colleague from King Hans talked about that early days of March 2020 and how dramatic things were. I mean, I know memories fade, but I think we were going to remember that for a very long period of time, where we were told to stay at home, not to go to our jobs, not to take public transit, to isolate from our own families, to build, everybody may remember the bubbles we were asked to create so that we can help each other and protect each other. And as a result, the entire economy had to be shut down. I mean, talk about artificial recession, because the economy before that, Madam Speaker, as we all recall, was working and accelerating at full throttle. Unemployment rate was extremely low. The GDP was high, but we had to shut everything down simply to protect all of us. But the government did not stop there. Speaker, government had to then ensure that all of us could also survive as we lost our jobs. Many Canadians lost our job. We remember that unemployment rate went up to about 13-14% because we asked people to stay at home in order to be safe. And what the government did is invest in its people. Billions and billions of dollars, unprecedented amount of spending was done, which often gets forgotten, that it was done so that Canadians, people who live in our constituencies, could feed themselves, could look after their families. Not to mention to help our businesses so that they can survive through that pandemic-induced recession as well. And Speaker, it's absolutely clear that that was costly. No ifs and buts about that. It required hundreds of billions of dollars to do so. But it was the right kind of investment, which I believe all members of this House supported, because what we were doing is we were supporting Canadians and Canadian families and Canadian businesses as we come down. Now, Speaker, we are in a recovery mode. I have a much better control over this pandemic. The vaccination has been a lifesaver for Canadians. Canadians should be very proud how they have stepped up and have got themselves fully vaccinated. I mean, over 80% of Canadians are double vaccinated, almost close to 60% now have also received their booster shots. Again, our government had to spend billions of dollars to procure those vaccines so that we can protect Canadians. The result is that people are employed again, that our economy is growing again. In fact, our employment rate is higher than before the pandemic is started. Unemployment rate is roughly around 5%, which is better than what it was before. In fact, our bigger challenge is that we cannot find enough people to work in our businesses. So all those supports helped us get through the pandemic and ensured that Canadians can get back to where they were, in fact, do even better, and that is exactly what we're seeing. So this budget, Madam Speaker, is in that context, is to say, okay, what kind of now economy are we going to rebuild as a result of this pandemic? And so we're doing few things in this budget. One, we're ending the pandemic supports. We knew that there was a time limit to all those supports, that they were there really to help people through and help businesses to go through the pandemic. So we're now sunsetting. In fact, most of those pandemic supports have ended, which of course reduces government spending significantly. And now what we're doing is really investing in post-pandemic economic recovery, and I'm going to spend some time on as to how we're doing that, while also bringing our debt and deficit in control. And we see that the budget is working on all those three aspects, because we recognize that we have to be fiscally, we have to be prudent, and we need to make sure that all the borrowing we had to do and the investments we had to make in Canadians, as they are now coming to an end, that we also look at in ensuring that we bring our debt and deficit in control as well. In terms of, Madam Speaker, investing in post-pandemic economic recovery, there are a few very important things that we are doing in order to ensure that. And I speak that from my experience as a member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre. I've seen how all the supports, whether there was employment income supports or whether rent support for small businesses, how they all helped my constituents in Ottawa Centre. I talked to small businesses, I talked to individuals, and how they have been able to manage, and now through the pandemic, and now going back into the workforce. Now we're looking at issues around affordability. And the most important thing is, of course, affordable housing, to make sure that we build more affordable housing and make sure that affordability of ownership of housing is available. Just in my community, over the last couple of weeks, I visited affordable housing at Carlington Community Health Center in my riding, or right just downtown on the corner of Rochester and Gladstone, where 140 new homes are being built and families are moving in, is one of the largest passive house that's being built through the support of Canadian government, so that individuals and families can have hope. We are going to be investing in dental care as a result of this budget. And some people may say, well, this is something that happened as a result of a deal between Liberals and NDP, and that's a good thing. This is exactly how Canadians always ask us, is to work together and to work on those good ideas. And I'm glad that in collaboration with the New Democratic Party, we are going to be creating a dental care plan for low to mid income Canadians. But also, Speaker, for me and for my constituents, our transition to low carbon, in fact, I would hope zero carbon economy, is extremely important. And we're seeing through the emission reduction plan some real tangible actions being taken to ensure that we're investing in public transit. Right here in my city of Ottawa, we're building the LRT, which is electrified. We're getting electric buses to ensure that people are not driving cars, but we are moving towards a low carbon transition. I see, Madam Speaker, my time is coming to end, but there's so much to talk about that speaks to this post-pandemic recovery that not only helps people, but also builds a more resilient economy that is transitioning in an environment that is fossil, fuel-free, and allows people to survive and thrive, and Canada to be an economic force around the world. Thank you very much.
Questions et commentaires.
Questions and comments?
Chatham-Kent-Leamington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my honourable colleague across the way for his comments. Early in his comments, he referenced the robust economy that Canada was experiencing just prior to the pandemic. And then later on, he referenced that this budget was getting the debt and the deficit under control. So I'm wondering if he could comment then on the wisdom of having this government spend adding $112 billion to this country's debt pre-pandemic, and then now how this budget gets our present debt under control in the context of the public budget officer's comments saying that stimulus funding was not required, and this budget does not even account for all of the other measures that have been promised but do not appear in this budget.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for his question. Speaker, we've been investing in Canadians from the moment we came into government. Right here in my community, as I was mentioning, we've seen a tremendous amount of investment in affordable housing, where in the past, under the previous Conservative government, federal government was nowhere to be seen in the business of building new affordable housing. In fact, Speaker, I had the honor of serving at the provincial level, and back then we were working in Ontario very closely with our local municipalities, and we only had wished if the federal government was at the table so that we can really address the issue of chronic homelessness. That's the kind of investment our government has been making. Another good example is the child benefit, to ensure that we get children out of poverty. All those things helped us get through this pandemic. Now it's time to work on the next set of post-pandemic recovery plan.